All right. All right. So, David, uh, thank you for giving me some of your time.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I know you're a really busy guy. You got lots going on. So, the first question is, how did you get into the self transformation game?
Well, man, it's because my previous existence was is the self-destruction game.
Right.
uh, I mean, I started smoking tobacco when I was 13. I think I started smoking marijuana around the same time, and I played hard until I was about 28. And it was just going to be, I managed nightclubs. I lived around the world. I mean, the last point of departure, the turning point was in around. I was living in the south of Portugal. I was living in the Algarve for 3 years as a catering director, and it was full stop all the time, just go 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 go. And so there had to be a switch. And so I had a conversation with my father. I think I was drunk at the time, and my father had a natural health clinic in Canada. And he said, listen, he said, I can't afford to pay you, but I can give you room and board if you want to do something different. And
Right.
so I left the lifestyle and I went, this was 25 years ago. I left that crazy lifestyle, and I started an internship in natural health care. So, and that was a couple decades ago, and I haven't looked back since.
So you began the journey working with your dad.
Yeah, yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, well, and I was estranged from him, right? I hadn't spoken to my family in probably 10 years or so, so I was really had nothing to do with them. And so it was kind of it was a good turning point for him and a good turning point for me. We kind of sorted our stuff out a little bit, and I got to work.
So there was a kind of like a emotional personal growth going on at the time as well.
Yeah,
Reconnecting with your dad.
yeah. Well, I mean, because I left as a youth and I came back as an adult,
Right.
right? So so the adult mind started taking over what the juvenile mind wouldn't let go. You
Right. Right.
know.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand that. Um, so you've helped obviously quite a number of people um, transform their bodies and minds. What are five of the biggest challenges that your clients face when trying to transform themselves?
Um, well, it was a good question because I was thinking about it, and I think just from my own journey, I think peer support is a huge one. Like when I was a smoker, my friends that smoked would always, I'd be trying to quit. They go, "Come on, just have a cigarette. Don't be an idiot." Right? So you actually had to find a new group of people to associate with, which is hard, especially if your family has a very destructive lifestyle. Then you
Yeah.
have to look outside of your peer group to find somebody that can support you in that new endeavor. So peer support's a big one. Um, the nutritional deficit, and this is a real crucial one because you think about I think about my previous lifestyle and how poorly I ate and how badly I treated myself. And so that meant the journey forward, there was a lot of damage I had to undo. And so nutritional deficit is kind of like being bankrupt, right? If you're bankrupt, you can't go start a new business. You can't do anything new because you have no financial leverage. And when people are nutritionally bankrupt, quite often what they do is they start an exercise program that's fairly rigorous, but it's way too soon. Like it's
Right.
way too soon in the game. So I generally get people to wait about a couple months before they do anything vigorous. We do little things just to get them sorted out, but being in the hole nutritionally is a really big problem for people because exercise is just unbearable when you're in that space. Um, Another big problem for people is postural weakness, right? So physically, they're not strong enough to exercise because they don't have enough stability in their joints. They have no core strength. They have no upper body postural strength. So being weak, quite often people with postural weaknesses will start exercising and then they'll get hurt. And then they'll say, see, I told you every time I start, I get hurt. Well, of course you are because you have no postural strength. So that's a big challenge people have to overcome. And two more would be their old self-image, how they perceive themselves, self-image, and I'm sure we'll get into this again in the conversation. but a really lousy self-image is not going to inspire you to do anything different.
Right.
And the last one actually kind of goes with the nutritional piece, but it's brain chemistry issues. And what I mean by that is that if you've taught your brain over time to become addicted and to become very highly sensitive to salt and sugar, your taste buds even change to prefer and crave the salt and sugar. Your brain prefers it, your taste buds are wired to it, and anything that doesn't actually have that flavor, that intense flavor, your taste buds won't pick it up. So nice natural foods, which like for me now taste amazing, but in the beginning had no taste at all. Right? So there's lots of things that you got to clean up, and you got to be aware that you got to pay the piper when you first start. There's some things that you have to pay for. It's not just a matter of saying, oh, okay, you're going to start a new lifestyle. Well, come on in. It's just really easy. Not that simple, unfortunately.
I mean, look, David, you have just gone through some really serious stuff here. Just to recap what you're saying, you're talking about your peer group, your circle of friends. You're talking about being nutritionally bankrupt. I've never actually heard it put that way before, but it makes so much sense that you've got nothing to actually leverage when you're trying to actually work out. You talk about postural strength, actually having enough strength to actually do a workout in the first place.
Yeah.
And self-image. Like you said, we're gonna definitely touch on that a little bit more. And the brain chemistry, the fact that salt and sugar are really drugs, really. So yeah, that's some really, really deep stuff. So going on based on these 5 things that you mentioned, how do we overcome these things? How do we overcome these challenges? For me, the peer group thing is it's not like, sorry guys, I don't really want to be your friends anymore because you keep me back, sort of thing. How do I deal with that? And these are the challenges.
Yeah, well, I think it's it's finding the peer support was a hard one for me because and it's a hard one for people, especially if it's in your family. Like you just can't leave the house. And I think it's being able to be confident enough in your journey and not taking on what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of, it's not demonizing for other people for not making good choices.
Right.
It's I kind of liken it to somebody who's just found God today, right? They've had a terrible life for 20 years, and they just become enlightened and awakened, and now everybody else is a sinner. You go, man, you just make people angry when you do that. It's just, if you found this new way. Sorry, go ahead.
I'll give you another example. You being a former smoker, you should know this one. So you've just decided to stop smoking, and you could smell it everywhere, and then turn up your nose in disgust at everybody else. You're only doing it yourself 2 weeks ago.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
I wrote about this numerous times over the last couple of years, and I said, we want to be able to be graceful enough in our journey to give people the time to figure it out on their own. But I think part of the peer support piece, and this is what I really talk to people a lot about, is that I said, when you're on this journey, and though it's challenging because you might be alone in it, think about how many people you will inspire by your willingness to dig into it and change. How many lives would you potentially save because you're willing to dig in and make this work, right? So don't demonize anybody else, even if it's inside your own family. Have your own path. Don't make comments about what they're doing. Let them do their own thing, right? They'll come around and they'll be inspired by you, but they won't be inspired if you're just poking everybody in the eye, telling them, what a disgusting thing they're doing and how terrible it is. I just said, with the example of the smoker. And it's got to be kind of done gracefully and with a big understanding of, it took me 20 years to figure it out. I think I should be able to give you at least a month or two to figure it out on your own.
So being non-judgmental
Yeah, absolutely.
would be a part of it. Um, Not don't want to take you off track because we still want to find out about how to work with the nutritional bankruptcy and the postural strength and all of that sort of stuff. But I just want to comment on veganism as a way of life, and that I get the impression from a lot of vegans that they somehow are being judgmental to non-vegans, and that's putting people who would like to be vegan or think about being vegan off. Not everyone's judgmental who's a vegan, but there's that little bit of a sense. Is that what you're speaking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, exactly. I think the point is that when we adopt an idea, like, and we'll call veganism like an ideology, when we adopt an idea, if it's done from an emotional standpoint, and we feel like, okay, this is the thing, we lean into, when we adopt an idea so aggressively, um, and we have that judgmental part against other people. We know, and this is a Carl Jung thing, right? This is a kind of a psychological thing. When I'm judging somebody else, it's my own criticism of myself is what's showing up.
Right.
When I'm judging somebody else about their lifestyle, it's because I don't feel good about me. There's something in me that's the problem. I'm just projecting it on you.
Right.
Right. So, and that's been known for, for centuries. That conversation's been around a long time. But the great philosophers and psychologists of the 19th century, they talked about, and especially Carl Jung, and I think his quote shows up quite a bit. It says, basically, what irritates me about you just illuminates what's going on inside of me.
There's an old saying: when you point at someone, there is four fingers pointing back at you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And touch briefly on the veganism thing. The problem with all this stuff is that there is no the plan. Humans are so diverse, and we're seasonally diverse. It's way more complicated than you think. But for myself, I try to push people back in history as far as I can to say, what is our cultural identity around diet? What is our cultural identity around food? What is our seasonal identity when it comes to food and lifestyle? There's so many things that have been in place for thousands of years. We've disrupted it in the last 100, which has, of course, caused all sorts of mayhem. And, there's some real basic fundamental truths, and they're more about our ancestry and the way things used to be that I try to take people back to that seem to be more relevant.
Fantastic. So tell me about the nutritional bankruptcy, how you deal with that.
Well, the example I give is that, if you could afford a totally organic diet, right, 100% organic fish, organic beef, organic milk. Now, I grew up on a hobby farm, so we had organic, we grew our own vegetables, we raised, pigs for meat, we had goats for goat milk, and I did manual labor. So the perfect environment to grow a human being. But even with all that organic stuff and with that labor, we still actually used herbs. My grandmother would put herbal things together. She'd have broths on the stove. We drank cod liver oil during the winter. It was disgusting for the vitamin D. Yeah. So we always use supplementation of some sort ever since we've walked the earth. So with people that are nutritionally bankrupt, we try to clean up the diet as much as possible, but we use supplementation of various sorts to bring up those nutritional levels to baseline. Because if you think about it, a completely organic diet was only designed to keep healthy organisms healthy. It was not designed to pull you out of the dirt, like to pull you out of the rut.
Right.
And that's what people seem to forget, because there's a big thing around, well, I just want to eat whole foods. Absolutely. You don't want to live on supplements forever, but there's no evidence that you can live on just food forever. In fact, again, we've always used herbal supplements of some sort or some sort of supportive nutrition pardon me, for thousands of years. So that's the piece that I get people to look at. And what we end up doing is that we bring up the nutritional levels much more rapidly. So within 30 days to 45 days, we can really level people off pretty powerfully. And now we have something to build from.
It's interesting that you said that, because you've talked about people going back to some sort of cultural diet, culturally. And you're talking about supplementation. Now, in my culture, we have something we call bush tea, where, you know, like my grandmother, she would go in the bush and come out with some leaves and make tea for you to drink, you know, and each one of those leaves would do something different to help you if you were sick or something like that. So I do get the point about the supplementation.
Yeah, it's always been here.
That is so true. And I want to ask about the self-image and brain chemistry.
All right. Well, the self-image part, you know, and this is I've had a real big study of this over the last 15 years because I've been fascinated by our brain, our nervous system. Well, I'm fascinated by all of it, but very curious about the mind. And I'll give you a good example. I was working with a lady yesterday online, and she's part of a program that I have called the I Am Project. And she was saying, you know, I can do all these things in my life. I'm a bookkeeper. I can look after all these accounts. I can look after my daughter, my granddaughter. Like, I'm really good at looking after everyone else, but I just can't be, I'm not inspired. I just seem to struggle when it comes to kind of getting my workouts done and eating properly. And she's put on about another 30 pounds. So I said, well, I mean, but if you look at all the other parts of your life, you're doing it for somebody else. Right? So you're working hard because you and your husband like to travel. So there's a big reason outside of, you know, I don't work because I love, you know, she doesn't do bookkeeping because she loves it. She does it because there's a benefit that she recognizes that's beyond just the actual work. Working for her daughter and her granddaughter, that's really easy. But when it comes to diet and exercise, the emotions behind it are really immature, because when I asked her, I said, when did you start the whole self-image thing? How far back in history did you start developing a really poor self-concept? I said, when you were 12. She goes, well, when I was probably 12 or 13. I said, so you started this whole idea around, you know, when I look in the mirror, I hate my gut, and, you know, my breast is sagging, and my body, you know, she's disgusted with her body. So, but that goes back, she's in her 60s, so that goes back, you know, 40 years. So here's the interesting thing that we do with the mind. When you hear something, you take the words I'm saying, and then you take those words and you relay the message, right? Your brain decodes the auditory piece, and it matches it against what you already know, right? That's the only reason you know, because you understand English based on the memory of you learning English, right? That's how you know it. And so the words I'm saying, so when she's having this experience around exercise and eating a certain way and being healthier, her brain is accessing the juvenile part of her psychology of the 12 or 13-year-old, and the 12 or 13-year-old isn't disciplined enough to get up and exercise and get up and eat properly, right? So right. She's using the wrong part of her psychology when it comes to exercise and diet. So we had this big conversation around, well, you know, and I had her do a bit of visualization. I said, if you could go back and you could talk to the 12-year-old right now, and let's say you're the great aunt, right? Because she's 12 and you're 60-some years old. What would you tell her? And I had her actually go back and think about the experience the 12-year-old had and the emotions she was having. And she started thinking in this kind of split way, and she started communicating with a young version of herself, kind of outside of her mind. And we ended up collapsing this old memory, so that when she thinks of a 12-year-old, she was trying to communicate with her 12-year-old self, getting the 12-year-old to want to exercise, to be of support, because there's important things in her life that she has to do. It was a really kind of an interesting game, but it kind of speaks to the term when somebody goes, you know, Travis, you know, dude, you're not feeling like yourself today, or that is totally out of character for you. Totally characteristic for a 13-year-old, but not characteristic for an adult male. Or when people say it's so out of character, or I'm not feeling like myself, or so those words really kind of lend to the fact that we have the ability to float inside of our memory and pick up ideas from our past as a reference point to how we view our current reality. It's really, really strange.
Listen, David, you're going into some really deep stuff because you're now talking about the ability to separate one aspect of yourself from other aspects of yourself and delving into parts of your being. And
Well, can I simplify it, Travis? Can I make it really simple?
yeah, go on for it.
Okay, because I don't want to get people all make it too esoteric or complicated. If I think about the things that I love doing, which is I love talking about this stuff, and I'm energetic. I'm obviously kind of jacked up for the conversation. I feel good. Now, this feeling I can recognize. I feel confident, right? I feel like I know my material. I feel that I'm capable. When I don't feel this way, when I feel uncertain and insecure, and if I look around in my environment and there's nothing to be uncertain and insecure about, then I look at that feeling. So that feeling's not mine. Just because I'm feeling it doesn't mean it belongs to me in the current tense of who I am. Right? So then I can stop and say, okay, it feels uncomfortable. It's like fear. Fear doesn't tell you to do anything. It just says, look around and make sure. Yeah. If I look around and make sure nothing's going on, then say, well, thank you, fear, for kind of freaking me out there for a second, but it's okay. I don't have to buy into everything I think or feel.
Yeah.
It's not necessary. And I think that's the part. People over-identify with the stuff going on in their head or what they feel in their heart. And if I know who I am as an adult male, and I know what I've done and what I've accomplished and what's in my current reality, anything that's contrary, I should really question it, especially if it's destructive.
Yeah. I mean, that simplifies it right down to the bare bone. From what you're saying, I'm getting that if you don't feel right, just take a moment and ask yourself, is this who you really want to be? Is this who you really are? If you're not feeling the way you want to be feeling, ask yourself why. Yeah. So let's because we're gonna get into more of that sort of mind questions in a bit. But I want to ask you, if someone was just starting out on a fat loss journey, what are the 3 things that you would recommend that they have in place to ensure they stay on track?
Well, and we're really simply, we talked about this before, peer support, being somebody on your side, an accountability partner. So, I mean, that's crucial, somebody very non-judgmental, and, hopefully somebody, it'd be nice to have somebody within your family circle, but you can find it anywhere. Having a coach and, and it's, there's it could be a fitness coach, somebody you can check in with. One big thing I really recommend that people do is I always tell people, go see a physiotherapist before you start, and then have your body checked out to make sure there's no lurking injuries. There's something not sitting there waiting to kind of take you off track. So that's really important to make sure that you're physically able. It's not just about having a heart that's strong, but I want to make sure my joints there's no pre-existing problems that are going to trip me up down the way to throw me off. And that happens all the time. People get started, 5 weeks of the journey, the knee goes out, the knee becomes sore, the shoulders start to bother them because of an old injury from 10 years ago. If you had an old car, you haven't driven in a while, and you want to drive from, let's say, from downtown London, and you want to drive to Germany, you're going to want to make sure that there's oil, that the pistons are working, that there's air in the tires. You're not going to take the old jalopy and drive it, carefree and hope it doesn't break down, right? That's so right. You're going to start the journey, see a physiotherapist, and have it checked out just to make sure. And then the last one is know why. Know why you even started. And that's, I think Simon Sinek has a very powerful video on that. And he wrote a book said, start with why.
Yeah.
And the why is important. And why on the positive note of it, right? People say, people come out and say, well, why do you want my services? Well, because, I'm fat and I'm just disgusting and I'm uncomfortable and I don't want to be like this anymore. Well, that might be true, but that's hardly motivating. Right? Because if every time you think about your journey, you have to think about being fat and lazy and disgusting, and yet when you keep thinking about that, that's not going to motivate you to do anything different. But if you think about why in the manner of, well, I bet by the end of this year I could be like in 10 times better shape and a positive role model for my kids, and that would be amazing. And I see nowadays people getting sick and some people not making it because they're careless with their health. Well, I don't want that to happen, because this whole weird thing that's going on in the universe now probably going to happen again. So I'm going to be prepared physically for the next onslaught, especially if I'm a bit older. I want to make sure I have strong immunity. And you're looking for a lot of the positive reasons why, and you make sure that the why is up front and center, and it's powerful. It's emotionally powerful to keep you motivated. So those three things: peer support, having a good coach, knowing where you're starting from, and then having a powerful why to keep you going.
That is amazing, because these 3 points, the peer support, good guidance through coaching, and a positive, powerful why, is stuff that you could actually share with other people. And it's like a circle. Every time it goes around, it gets more power, and every time it goes around, it becomes more powerful. When you share your why, you share your positivity with people who care about you. That is something that anyone who's on a fat loss journey should really think about putting in place. David, that's some really great advice. Sometimes I feel that this is so hard. I mean, that's what you might hear from some people. Sometimes I feel that this is so hard and I just want to give up. If this is how I felt, what advice or guidance would you give?
Well, we just touched on it, in our last question around the why piece. Now, when people that have pets, how many people will take their pet, spend hundreds of dollars on visits to the veterinarian? The veterinarian says, give these medications to your pet, but they're suppository. So your poor dog or cat, you got to lift the tail up and, right? But people will buy the medication. They'll give the medication to their pet. They'll follow up on the vet visit, the veterinarian visits. They'll do all those things for their animals, but they rarely do that for themselves, right? And even and just to take that a bit further, there's a great book called Psychology and Health, and there's a lot of research that said, just like we don't look after ourselves. There's a really interesting, there's a problematic issue with this, where even take people, let's say people with glaucoma. 50% of the people that have glaucoma will go blind in one of their eyes because they don't take the drops. Just because they don't take the drops. 50% of the people that go blind in one eye go blind in both eyes because they don't take the drops. And we look at it, it's insane, right? Like
is it because we kind of feel guilty if we take care of ourselves? So we feel like we don't want to be narcissists in love with ourselves.
I think the problem is that it's so multi-layered. There is no easy answer for it, right? I mean, you can make assumptions. One of the assumptions was that when it came to healthcare years ago, doctors used to come to your house, right? Like 70 years, they come to your house, they administer the medication for you, they'd make their rounds. That's the way it used to be. Now it's all now you have to self-administer your medication. But I think it's just when we know it's challenging, and we know that the failure rate in fitness and weight loss is so high. Like it's just like 92% of people in weight loss will fail, and in fitness most people just never. I think the $3.7 trillion spent on gym memberships every year for globally, less than 18% will actually show up. And then the 18%, less than half will only go more than 100 times every year. So pretty dismal numbers. Right. But I think it comes down to one simple thing, is that emotions drive behavior, right? And emotions will keep you in your seat. Emotions will get you off your seat and get you outside. And it's the practice of really basic core emotions. And again, it goes back to the why piece. Why am I doing this? And if I don't make it complicated, if I just have this vision in my head, I get pictures on it, I have reminders everywhere, and I continue to remind myself, what's the point? It doesn't have to be perfect. I just got to get in motion. So every morning. My grandmother used to read the King James Bible every morning. And I asked her, well, and it's not an easy read. First of all, it's in Old English, and the Bible is really tiny. But she read it because it gave her something to think about in a real positive way, and that became the way she started her day. So starting off by meditating on your why, or reading your why, or looking at vision boards about why this journey is so important. If you just do that before your mind's allowed to do anything else, then you'll find you'll be more motivated to take little steps each day, which ultimately will lead you down the path that you want to go.
I really like that answer. Focus on your why. Focus on your why, help you to take those little steps. Now, here's the trick. A lot of people, although they know what they want, they really don't know how to get there. So my next question kind of deals with that.
Right.
I have no idea what I'm doing from one day to the next.
Right.
How do you expect me to even plan my meals? If you were told this by a client, how would you respond?
Well, just do breakfast. Just do one thing. There's a video out on YouTube. I think it's from a U.S. Navy SEAL or somebody in the military, maybe as a sergeant or what have you. But anyhow, he said, you did, and Jordan Peterson. I don't know if you know Dr. Jordan Peterson. He's a Canadian clinical psychologist, but the thing is that they said, make your bed. Just make your bed, or just have breakfast. Just do one thing every morning. Just one thing. Don't worry about the rest of it. If you master one thing, then you're more likely to add something else to it. And it sets that behavior. It sets a new behavior. And anybody can actually get up and make a piece of toast and have some avocado. Or it's easy to blend up a shake in the morning. Or it's easy to make your bed. Just do one thing. Don't make it complicated. And if you do that one thing, then the likelihood is that the rest of your day actually changes. The trajectory of your day slightly changes because you interfered with the way that you normally run your day. And so just, they say if a rocket is off by 1 degree at takeoff, it's thousands of miles off course by the time it gets up into the stratosphere, right? By the time it's out in space. So if your normal pattern keeps leading you in the same way, all you need to do is a 1% shift, which just make breakfast, don't worry about anything else. Or just make your bed, don't worry, don't even think about doing anything else. That one little shift alters the way your brain is wired, and you'll find yourself doing things actually in a very positive way, and it's much easier than you think. We make it way too complicated.
That is really powerful, because it got me thinking again of your previous answer to what it is you need to have in place, being the positive peer group, the coaching, to have those things in place. What was the third one you said?
And the why.
And the why. So
yeah.
The positive reinforcement, the coaching, and the why, that forms a positive reinforcement, a positive feedback loop. And if you just concentrate on just having just one of those things. So let's say you go to your coach and you tell your coach why you want to be fit. Or whilst you're making your bed, you remind yourself why you want to be fit. Just that little thing you saying is enough over time, because a lot of people want to get fit overnight, get healthy overnight, and they don't realize it takes time. So over time, it will help you to get to where you want to be with the positive reinforcement. I really love that answer.
Yeah. Like I said, we make it. Yeah, we want to hit the ground running for some reason, right? We want to be, and people are misled by the stuff they see in the media, which is, and if I said to you, Travis, if you have 2 years, I can change your life. You're going, what do you mean 2 years? I mean, I got 6 weeks. I got to cruise. I got to look amazing. I got to get rid of my belly. you know, 2 years, that's ridiculous. And people don't like the answer. But the reality of it is that you can get really amazing things done in a short period of time. You can do extraordinary things over time. I'm turning 55 years old, and it's just, and I look around and people that I meet that I used to be in the bar industry with, like a couple decades ago, they look like they're 100.
Right.
You know, and people are really quite amazed, saying you don't look like you're 50, you don't look like you're in your mid 50s. I'm going, yeah, well, you know, I took a destructive lifestyle and I cleaned up a little bit at a time, and this is the payoff, is being in my you know, on the other side of 50, going, I'm in better shape than I was when I was in my mid 20s. You know.
Look, so I want to get on to the next one.
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead.
Is there a particular thought pattern that you recommend your clients have in relation to food, exercise, or themselves? And if there is a particular thought pattern they need to have, why is that?
Well, very simply, it's just that I get to do this. It's not that I have to do this. I get to do it. It's a privilege to do this, right?
Uh-huh.
Right? Rather than I have to do this, right? I have to eat healthy. I have to go to the gym, right? You know, I have to exercise, right? I have to get to bed.
There's almost some kind of mental aikido going on, because with the taking it from a point of I get to do it. Also it implies a bit of gratitude, and having a bit of gratitude in the background, that kind of changes the emotional energy to it. Instead of, you know, I've got to go to the gym again, I got to lift weights, you're like, oh, I actually get to eat healthy, and you feel blessed,
Yeah.
being able to live healthier. That is a fantastic mental aikido that you've just done. That's amazing. So
Yeah.
tell me again, what is the thought? Is it the thought process, the thought? Let me go back to my question and make sure I ask it right. The thought pattern. What is the thought pattern? If you just repeat that thought pattern again for those of us that need it.
Yeah. Well, again, like I said, it's just, instead of saying I have to do this, like I get to do this. Like I get to be healthy. I get to rebuild my life. I get to do something extraordinary. Wow. You know, and I thought about it. I used to use the example. I get two gentlemen. They're both 100 stone. Okay, I'll use your weight and measurements. Both 100 stone. And,
yeah.
Right. So I asked one guy, you're 100 stone. Why are you coming to see me? Well, he said, because, you know, I'm fat and lazy. Like, I just hate this. I'm worried I'm going to have a heart attack, and I'm exhausted. I'm a lousy role model for my kids. And, you know, so every time he thinks about it, it's, I have to do this. And it's all negative, right? And though he's right, yes, that, you know, he should be a better role model. He should take care of himself. It's not that it's incorrect. It's just the wrong reference, because every time I think about it, every time I think about healthy eating and exercise, I have to go into the negative. Rather than I talked to the other guy and I said, so why are you here? He's going, well, you know, my grandfather, I remember my grandfather when I was a kid, he was so strong, and he put me on his shoulders. We'd walk out to the forest, look at the deer, and he was just powerful. And you know, even in his 90s, he was still a strong, vibrant human being. And he, you know, he had so much joy. And, you know, I want to be like that. I mean, that, you know, I want to be like that for my grandkids and for my kids. So the other guy, every time he thinks about exercise, he thinks about those beautiful role models and some really great inspiring kind of messaging behind it. And it's just, the get to is negative, that, you know, or that the get to is positive, because all these positive memories can be associated to it. And the have to is just going to keep you in your seat.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference in energy between the two mindsets. One kind of feels like a downer. The other one, you're like, you want to see the results. You want to put the work in so that you could spend time with the grandkids and be the powerful granddad. I get that. That is really powerful. so my next question is, if you had to recommend one mantra or power phrase, what would it be and why?
Actually, well, very simply, I am worth it. I am worth it. There's, self-image, negative self-image when it comes to, comes to our body, our body shape. Most of us, if we've been on the planet any length of time, I always say to somebody is that if you have a birth certificate, you have tragedy in your life. Welcome to planet Earth. It's just what it is.
Mm.
So quite often we get caught up in the, we talk about negative self-image, but you think of the self-image actually is an image of yourself that you hold in your mind that you can go back 20, 30 years or however back in your life. And when you're younger and you had these juvenile emotions and maybe you're bullied at school around being the heavier kid and, you weren't good at sports, whatever the case may be, your self-worth, how because peer grouping and peer challenges as you're younger is really, really powerful. I mean, there's a pecking order as you go through school. And as an adult, you're holding that idea inside your head of this child who was maybe a bit unhealthy, a bit overweight, and kind of ostracized as a kid. Well, you can hold those emotions long after you're a child. You can hold those emotions as an adult. But if you know what the feeling is that, like, I am worth it, and you run that thought process over and over again, your brain will start looking for evidence of that being true. Right? Because people say, well, how are you doing? Well, I am tired, I am fat, I am depressed. And the brain's looking for evidence of that as well, because you just said, I am, right? Yeah. So when you say, I am worth it, and you repeat that over and over again, the brain will look for evidence of that being true. And I assure you, there's plenty of evidence that that's true.
You keep on going back to a positive reinforcement cycle of yourself looking for a way to identify itself to you. So if you see yourself as this type of person, you will continually find reasons to continue seeing yourself that way. And by saying, I am worth it, you're giving yourself the energy to change how you see yourself, or to even see yourself worthy of the investment of the energy that it would take to make the change.
Yeah, I mean, we're being bombarded. I mean, and the conversation on social media, we're being bombarded by a lot of beautiful bodies, a lot of six packs, a lot of ripped, shredded dudes, right? A lot of beautiful women with, everything is so perfect. And man, if you're struggling with your self-image to start with, going online will just beat you into the dirt, because you see this false identification. When I competed as a natural bodybuilder for about 8 years, and how I look on stage competing is not how I wander around day to day. There's a big difference, right? I don't have that fake tan. I'm not flexing every muscle. I'm not exactly that lean all the time. And there's a real postural thing to set that up so you show your best side. But that's not how I look all the time. And so you need to really have a strong anchoring thought to keep you connected. And so again, when you repeat these words, I am worth it, over and over again, your brain will start looking for evidence of that being true. And like I said, and there's plenty of evidence that all of us have tremendous amount of worth that we don't even recognize.
So it's kind of like also having your priorities in order. So how will someone know if they've got their priorities in order?
Because it feels right. Because there's no confusion. It just feels right. When you're exercising, if I said, okay, Travis, okay, we're going to do a bicep curl, okay? Because, it's important for guys to only work biceps. Maybe chest, never legs, only maybe biceps and chest. So I said, okay, Now we're gonna do 15 repetitions. We're gonna do 4 sets, and halfway through the exercise, maybe on the second set, you're going, "Hey Dave, I don't feel that in my biceps anymore. What would I tell you to do? Would I tell you to continue doing what you're doing, or would I get you to reset?"
Right, right.
Yeah. Well, if it doesn't feel right, then stop. Right? I mean, your body's telling you. That bodybuilding actually taught me so much about the emotional context of life, because the whole idea is that if I'm exercising, I'm training heavy, what do I do? Well, I need to be stable. I need a strong core. I need to know what that is, right? Mentally, okay, here's my core. I lock my core into place. That's the same each and every time. And then what's the target? Well, there's a target muscle. Okay, flex it. Okay, I'm flexing that target muscle. How do I know I have it? Because I feel it.
Yeah.
I feel it, and I feel it, and I feel it. And my priorities in order, I feel aligned. I feel congruent. When my priorities are all messed up, it doesn't feel organized. It feels out of control, right?
Right. So tell me, Dave, what is Factor 3 fitness? What is that?
All right. So Factor 3, it's an online training program that I created many years ago, and then after I sold my practice about 3 years ago. So Factor 3 was it was a way of looking at fitness, saying fitness is really based on numbers, right? So if you want to change your weight, that's a number, right? If you want to bring your blood pressure down, that's a number. If you want to eat a certain amount of calories, that's a number. If your calories are divided into macros, like what percentage of protein, the carbohydrates, fat, those are all numbers. If you want to increase your aerobic capacity, your cardiovascular, that's a number. Sets and reps and volume and weight, all numbers. So I designed a program. So listen, let me help you sort out the numbers. And so every time you exercise, it's not so much about how much you lift per exercise, but how much work can you do in a period of time. And if we change the numbers, if we pay attention to the numbers, and I can show you how to change them, the numbers change, so do you.
Right.
It's just numbers, right? So, and it's confusing for a lot of people. So I get to take what I love to do, and I get to educate people on how this incredibly complex, amazing thing works. Empower them with some knowledge that's relatively easy to take on, and then every 4 or 5 weeks they get a new set of workouts. They get follow-along videos, instructional videos. I coach them online, and it's just doing what I love to do. But really, but I go by the expression: give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You teach a man how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And so I'm not giving people workouts. I'm teaching people first how this stuff works. So when they exercise, it makes sense, and then they own it. They own the process, right?
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. That's really, really important. Because just, getting one more rep in, that would increase your strength. Just adding an extra half a kilo to your weight, that will, so like you say, doing the numbers, focusing on the numbers is a good way to just keep you, on task. So if someone just started on their fat loss journey, and you could only give them one bit of advice. Someone's just started and you could only give them one bit of advice. What would that advice be?
The advice I give a lot of clients, especially on a weight loss journey, is I ask them, said, how many people will you inspire by your commitment to change your health?
Wow, you're not giving them advice, you're challenging them.
Yeah, because again, if it's just about you, you'll give up on yourself really way too easy. But if you look around in your environment, and again, I told this lady I was talking to yesterday, I asked her, I said, how many people will you inspire? How many friends do you know? Maybe family members, maybe your spouse. If you're willing to go first, to put it first, and realizing that you could be the inspiration to so many people if you went first. And because people respect what I have to say, but they don't relate to me because I've been a bodybuilder for 20 some years. because my old lifestyle so long ago, people don't relate to me. They respect what I have to say because I have some knowledge around the topic, but I'm kind of a unicorn, in what I do. So well, they won't listen to me, but they'll listen to you. And how many people will you inspire by your journey? And people sit back and think about it and going, yeah, it's my sister and, my best friend, and we're all struggling, but you're all just talking about the same problem. Who's going to step up?
Right.
And it's really empowering to know that your desire to make change will impact many other lives, because it's never just about you. It's not that simple. We're always connected.
That's kind of tricky what you've done, because you've actually tagged on to their why. You've kind of given their why an increment of power by adding that outside effect on they achieving what they want to achieve. That's kind of tricky. It's kind of very clever, very clever. So what does discipline mean to you?
It's actually, I looked discipline up just to see what the Webster's dictionary version of it, and discipline, actually, there's kind of a negative part to it, because it's almost like military kind of discipline, right? Where you're being punished, you're being disciplined. You discipline your dog for peeing on the rug, right? But for me, discipline is the ability to return back to my center, right? Return back to my core. So when people say you need to be disciplined, have a disciplined lifestyle. Okay, well, that's just really ambiguous. There's so many moving parts. But for me, the discipline, again, I'll just come back to the why piece, right? The discipline is returning back to center, is to having one point on the grid, one focal point, saying, this is what I'm coming back to. And, what's interesting, and I won't go on to too much of a tangent here, but I think it's really important for people to understand. You look at, I tell people within fitness, I said, it's not your fault, really. It's complicated. The whole world has changed so dramatically beyond comprehension that if you want to survive, man, you got to be so self-aware. You have to be on the ball and awake. Otherwise, man, you're not going to make it. It's not set up for you to win at all on any level. It's way too confusing. So if you go back even just 100 years ago, we had two things going on. One, we have a negative bias. We have this negative thing in our brain that makes us look out for danger, right? So it's called a negative bias, and it's kind of built into your circuitry, right? It's not bad. It's just there. It's there to remind you of dangers or challenging things. But what we had for thousands of years, which we don't really have anymore, was the positive influence, which was culture, which was spiritual practices, which maybe called religion or whatever. But we had a community, we had culture. So you're talking about being with your grandmother, going to the bush, she'd get some leaves. Well, in an environment where there was a negative bias in that environment, because the negative says, if I go by that tree at this time of year, something's going to drop out of that tree and kill me. So I need to know the smells and the sounds and the environment to make me aware and keep me safe. But if that was all you lived by, you'd be a nervous wreck because you'd be terrified to go anywhere. But what you had on the other side of that was you had these practices every single day. It was a practice that you had with your family. It was a practice around meal time. It was a practice around dinner time. It was a practice with your neighbors. It was a practice with your community. And when we talk about discipline, the reason why it's so much harder now is that we don't have that positive reinforcement of a culture that existed for thousands of years that we don't have anymore. It's been so diluted, especially in North American culture and most developed countries, like the UK. It's so watered down that it's challenging. And we think it's our fault. We think I just don't have discipline. No, it's not that. It's not that simple. It's just we don't have a culture that supports it anymore. It's way too abstract. So the discipline is that realizing that the environment is not set up for me to win, though I can. It's way too confusing. There's way too many things going on. I just need to bring my vision back to a point on the horizon and be disciplined enough. Well, go back to the why, to remember why I'm here, to remember why I'm doing it, and be disciplined to that one thing. And when you align to that one thing, you'll offset all the negativity that's coming at you 24/7.
You remind me of some kind of kung fu master, bro. Because it's like, you know, um, I love manga. I watch a lot of manga, and there's this there's this story or in a few of them where like this guy, he just practices one punch for he does like 100,000 of them, and he's able to master because he's just focused on one punch. This one guy, he's run he runs a 10K, does 1,000 push-ups and 1,000 sit-ups every day, and he's able to master because of it. Just focus on one thing. It sounds like one of those kung fu films. Just focus on one thing. It is so simple. It is so beautiful. But it's kind of hard to do because there's so much going on in our modern day life.
Well, the best athletes in the world. I mean, if you look at Serena Williams, what does she do? She gets paid like $10 million or $20 million a year to do what? Forehand, backhand, and serve. Forehand, backhand, and serve. And how many times has she done that? Hundreds of thousands of times. Is she bored? No. She looks amazing. She makes lots of money. She's the best at what every person in their particular field of interest mastered some basic things which made them a success. Why can't we take the lesson from that? Right? Why not? Right? Bruce Lee said, "I'd be more afraid of a man, that has practiced one punch 1,000 times, right, yeah, than somebody who's practiced an entire art form." When you look at, there's a comment around boxing, around martial arts. If I took somebody and I trained somebody in martial arts for 1 year and boxing for 1 year, who would win? So they said probably the boxer. Why? Because he has less things to sort out.
Yeah.
He's got a few punches to deal with. And I think the discipline is in the simplicity, as you said, the simplicity of the exercise. Keep it simple. Because as soon as you make it complex, as soon as you try to learn 15 things, you're done.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, talking to you, I've really enjoyed our discussion so far. It's very deep on different levels. I have been training for 6 months, and I believe that I have done all I can with my diet, but I'm not getting any stronger or losing any fat. What would you recommend for me?
All right. Well, then this one, and that's like a real common one, right? Because a lot of people do get frustrated, and and there's no easy answer because if you're doing, let's say you're doing, 4 new things over 6 months, right? So you go to the gym for the first time, and it's weight training is new to you, eating a particular way is new to you. So I would say, listen, let's look at everything you're doing, and then let's change one thing.
One thing.
And so it's all you get. It's a scientific principle, right? Yeah. So we want to take one variable, and let's look at your diet. So, well, if your energy level is pretty good, but you don't feel bad, you're just not seeing any results. Well, then let's take your diet and let's look at. For some people, what I quite often do is I bring their carbohydrate levels down a little bit, even the protein, and bring the fat up just a little, right? So I bring the fat content up maybe to 40% of the diet, and say, okay, now we'll lay out a menu. We'll go online. We'll create a menu on, let's see, myfitnesspal.com, right? We'll create a menu, see what 40% looks like, and let's just do that for 2 weeks. And at the end of 2 weeks, let's go back and remeasure and see if anything's changed. And if nothing's changed, then that wasn't the problem. I mean, really, that's all you can do. Otherwise, you're assuming way too much. And listen, we're 150 trillion cells. I mean, it's a tad complicated. So, yeah. Right? So we just take one thing, and and quite often, I mean, diet's always a good place to start because people underestimate the food intake anywhere from 80 to 200%.
Right.
Like they way underestimate it. So it's quite often either people are eating way too much or eating way too little. So that's always a really good place to start.
Right. I think for me, the underestimation or overestimation of what I eat used to be a problem for me in the past, and I was kind of against weights and measures, but I've realized that if I want to have a certain aesthetic, then the weights and measures are necessary. But if you're not necessarily interested in that particular aesthetic and just want to be healthy, then maybe the weights and measures might not be for that particular individual.
Well, yeah, well, the thing is, you don't have to do it forever. I mean, I know that a medium-sized apple is 80 calories. I know that a medium-sized banana roughly is about 110 calories. I know a medium-sized baked potato is probably about 120 calories. I know that already. I don't have to know that again. It's already in my brain. So you only have to do a couple of weeks of it to learn what 20 grams of protein looks like, or what 4 ounces of chicken looks like, or what 4 ounces of fish looks like. Once you see it and you start putting it together, then you, okay, I got it. And then you don't have to do it anymore. Then you can just lay out a plate of food and say, okay, well, that's roughly 4 ounces, and that's roughly a cup, and that's roughly 2 cups of green vegetables, because I practice it, I have the knowledge, and now I can throw away, I don't have to measure it anymore. I can just see it. So you don't have to do it forever. You just do it at the beginning, just so you have the visual knowledge of, oh, okay, well, that's pretty simple. I was actually, either I was on point or I wasn't. But it's just, I mean, what else in the world, where else have you succeeded that didn't require some knowledge?
Yeah.
Right. It just makes sense. You accrue the knowledge in the beginning, and then you own it forever.
And the practical aspect of actually weighing it and having the experience of it, it kind of ingrains it in you, so you'll be able to tell it by sight.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very temporary. You don't have to do it forever, for sure.
If you could recommend 5 things that should be in everyone's routines, what would they be?
Structure. Well, routine is the word, right? Have structure, especially nowadays, because, man, we're living in a very bizarre time in history, right? Yeah, it's crazy. So, and lack of structure will make you depressed.
Yeah.
So we have a natural circadian rhythm, the body's natural biorhythm. So having structure is really important. And inside that structure, time block it, meaning that, okay, I've been doing free online Facebook Live kind of aerobic classes. Like, do you remember Tybo? Tybo was back in the 90s.
Yeah. He used to be in the movies, wasn't he?
Yeah, Billy Blanks. Yeah. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning, I get up at 6:30. I go into my living room, I set up my camera, and I do a Facebook Live, free 35-minute workout, 3 days a week, just for structure, just to help people with structure. So the structure is important. Time blocking it so I can look at my day, and if I write down, okay, I'm going to try to accomplish this, then I write down what I'm going to do, and I block off the time, so it's all kind of written out. And it takes the confusion out of your head. So it takes all these things I should be doing. And all of a sudden, by the end of the day, I'm 10 times more productive. And I realize that I remember to eat. I inserted, get off your butt and go for a 10-minute walk, get out of your chair, make sure you have your snacks. If I write it down and I just have the discipline to do that, then my days go much smoother. Another thing is, what is it here? And the beginning of each day, start your day off either with watching some positive YouTube videos, or meditate or pray, whatever your thing is, but start your day off in a real powerful way, right? Don't watch CNN, don't watch the news to see what COVID-19 is doing. Leave that to maybe later in the afternoon. You'll get the bad news later. You don't need to inundate yourself with it, because I didn't even realize how much it was stressing me out. Because I was checking to see, because economically I'm curious, right? I want to see how long this is going to last. But I found myself getting really, really tired, and I didn't know why. I'm going, you know what it is? Because I've been checking on this thing. Now I'm kind of hooked to it. I've been watching this thing every day, a couple times a day, and then I get caught up in what Donald Trump's doing, because that's just a circus within itself. And I'm watching all this stuff, and I realize that actually it's stressing me out. And so I have to, so I stopped doing that. So I haven't seen anything today yet. But starting a day off with meditation, prayer, reading, positive YouTube videos to really give you something to anchor yourself with. And let's see here. Structured time blocking. And what did I write down there? It's the first day of structured time blocking each day. Meditation. I think nowadays, actually, just looking at about every 2 hours, give yourself an opportunity to go do something for 5 minutes. Get off your butt and go for a walk, but every 2 hours, and move. But yeah, so get up, walk to the end of your block and back, and then come back and sit down and go back to work if you have to. But don't stay seated in inert, or don't stay static for 6 or 7 hours at a time. Every 2 hours, move, and like I said, just head down your block and back. It's enough just to break up the pattern of sitting.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a lot of flat bums if you don't start moving, I tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are pretty basic things, right? It's just the structure is important for your mental health. The time blocking allows you to be really productive during your day. The meditation and the reading and the prayer in the morning is really important to reset your mindset. The gratitude piece, right? It could be morning gratitudes, saying, yeah, life is challenging, but I'm alive. Life is challenging, but there's so many beautiful things going on right now that I'm super grateful for.
I know I've asked you for 5.
Yeah.
And you've given me 3, but within those 3, they got some hidden gems that you could break apart into even more bits, because you talk about structure, to bring it into a bit of our time. Let's say some sort of lockdown on your time. Needs to be locked down. You totally put aside a certain amount of time in the day, lock that down for certain things, and you stick to that. I totally get that, and that leads itself to a certain amount of discipline as well. You talk about a positive start to your day, prayer, meditation, whatever. Going back almost to what you're talking about when you said about our lack of cultural practices. These positive mindfulness things to get your spirits up. That's very, very important for you to feel as your day progresses, that you kind of in tune with your own self and with your own life. And you also talk about getting up off your butt every 2 hours. You don't want to keep it flat. I'm going to call that transitioning as you move from one phase to another phase, to be aware of your why. Bring it back to your why. Why is it you taking the actions that you're doing? Listen, David, I think you're a bit of a master, you're a bit of one of those, talking to you is like, it reminds me of a Kung Fu master. Back, I come from St. Lucia, and we used to watch Kung Fu movies every Sunday, and you remind me of the dude that the young guy would go to when he just got busted up so that he could learn how to be a winner in life. That's you, David. That's you. So my next question is, I only have 10 minutes every other day to get some exercises. I can't afford the gym, and I have to stay at home because I am in isolation. Okay, it's weird. I know you think that I would have more time because I'm at home, but you haven't met my wife. What exercises would you recommend for me?
Well, here's It was funny when I read that. Actually, I laughed then too. um, there was an interesting study that was done with chambermaids in hotels, and they took two groups of chambermaids, and one was the control group, and chambermaids, like they're making beds, they're vacuuming, cleaning, what have you. And so the control group was just business as usual, and they did a bunch of measurements like body fat and blood pressure and heart rate, and seeing what those measurements look like. And they took the other group and they said, okay, listen, everything you do is exercise. Every time you move, you're vacuuming. And so they showed them how sweeping, cleaning, and wiping and vacuuming and making beds, and they showed them how all that could be exercise. So think of it as exercise, because it really is, because you're moving. But it's not in a gym format. And so when they got them in that mindset, I can't remember the length of the study, but at the end of it, the maids that viewed their manual, their cleaning labor as exercise had lost weight, lowered blood pressure, and heart rate.
Man, you got some Mr. Miyagi stuff going on there.
Yeah, exactly. Wax on, wax on, exactly. It's so true. And I go, well, how amazing is that? It doesn't have to be that complicated. So, if you're vacuuming, if I vacuum, to me, that's a one-arm row. I'm doing lat exercises. If I'm cleaning mirrors, I'm not just sloppy. I tighten my abs. So every wipe, my lower belly is being challenged. My abs are on. So you can turn day-to-day movements as exercise, because that's what we used to do anyhow before gyms are even a part of our reality. So I mean, that's the easiest way to look at it. If you're walking around, don't slough. Every step you take, turn your glutes on, stand up tall, walk really tall in your posture day to day. And as you're walking upstairs, make sure every step is a glute exercise. So you flex your bum every time you step. You walk along, walk tall and gracefully, right? Very tall. And all these little simple things really make a huge difference.
You're talking, it also boils down to being aware of yourself,
Yeah.
Being aware of where you are, being aware of how your body feels.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, well, and that's a simple thing. And aside from that, the only thing that, if you only got 10 minutes, I'd be doing two exercises primarily. I'd be doing bridges, meaning laying on your back, knees bent, lifting your bottom up, getting your glutes to fire over and over and over again. And the second one is I'd be doing some sort of shoulder-based exercise. It could be something simple as just pulling the elbows back and squeezing your shoulder blades together and squeezing back, because if you lose your postural strength, if you lose the strength of your glutes and you lose the strength of the muscles behind you in your kind of mid-back between your shoulder blades, your posture collapses, and then the risk of getting injured when you return to exercise is much higher, right? So strong bum, strong shoulder girdle, that would be the exercise I would have to do, or I really should do, just to keep my posture strong, and then start reimagining my day-to-day activities. Yeah, as soon as I said that, you sat up. It's so funny, right? It's interesting how that works. But yeah, and then just imagining that every time I'm walking around my house, I'm walking tall. You're a model on the runway, right? What's your posture like? And if you're aware of that, it actually makes a significant difference. It really does.
Yeah, it certainly does. It certainly does. I tell you, I'm definitely feeling the bridges and the shoulder that you mentioned. I think that make a big difference in just being conscious and aware of how your body is responding to the day-to-day challenges of life.
Well, what's really important as well, and we know this when people go on holidays, is that if you're on holidays, if you exercise, let's say you're in Mexico at an all-inclusive, which is super dangerous, right? If you exercise before you start your day, you're less likely to overeat and overdrink.
Right.
Because it sets the stage for the rest of the day. And so if you're thinking about moving your body in a certain way, even though you don't really have much time to exercise, but if you're thinking about posture and about good postural strength, and you're really conscious about that, it'll just transform into eating better automatically. It's just because it's a change in focus, right?
Yeah.
And it changes your dietary behaviors. You'll probably be a lot probably a lot nicer to be around, because I'm sure people getting a bit cagey by now, right? We're a month into it, and people getting a bit cagey. So even though that simple one thing, again, here we go, right? One thing of maintaining good posture and focus automatically affects everything.
Everything else. Yeah. So my next question would be, what exercises would you recommend for my wife? But I'm getting the sense that you'd say, tell her to sit up straight.
Yeah. Well, it takes postural muscle to do that. If I'm sitting up here, right? So here's an interesting. If I have to sit, which I do for my big part of my career, right now there's been 175 pounds per square inch on my L3 vertebrae, right? That's a lot. Now, if I do this, all right, or sit a bit forward, now there's almost 275 pounds per square inch on my lower back. So coming up here makes a big difference. If I'm standing, there's only 75 pounds per square inch on my lower back, because now my hips are involved. And if I'm lying down, there's only about 50. So you think about lying down, your lower back, which is where a lot of people suffer damage and injury, right? So your L3, so my lower back is affected by my posture. And if I'm slouched and leaning into it, I can put hundreds of pounds per square inch on my back and run the risk of actually really damaging it. So posture is key. Strong bum, right? Strong, good alignment reduces the stress on your lower back. So it's a really, really important thing.
Now, one of my habits, one of my favorite pastimes is people watching. And I noticed that women have a tendency to be more upright in their posture than men. Is that something you would agree with?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think so. I mean, it's just, part of it depends on vocation, like what they do for a living. And now that everybody is so, focused on their phone, we tend to get a lot of this more prolapsed posture. I think women, I think they can carry themselves a little bit better. There's a bit of a challenge inside of that, though, is that if women breastfeed, part of the posture is here. If they're looking after their children, their posture is here. So quite often, and women tend to be in a lot of administrative roles, right? Sitting at a desk. So a lot of the posture is simply like this anyhow. But it's, I think women are more self-conscious, so tend to carry themselves a little bit better because they tend to be more self-aware of appearance. A lot of times they say blokes can care less.
Yeah, they don't do the man spreading,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So listen, I want to thank you so much for giving me so much of your time. We're almost on the home stretch now.
Okay.
I think I'm too old to start working out. What would you say to me to try and change my mind?
Well, it's I guess one of the things to look at is that is you need to kind of, we invest money into our RSPs, into to mutual funds, because as we get older, we want some money. We want to make sure that we can actually survive at a certain standard of living. And when we think that we're too old, we have to. That statement comes from somebody who's not paying attention to what's happening, right? And so we kind of dismiss it. And I think it's a very dismissive statement when people say, well, I can't exercise. That, it's just not me, right? I'm not a gym person. It's dismissive because we don't want to face the reality of what we're kind of freaked out about. Dr. Wayne Dyer wrote a series of books, and one book that I listened to this audiobook 100 times over a 10-year period. He said something that was very striking to me, and that's really stuck with me, for so many years. He said, we live our lives in terror of the fact of our death. So because we pretend that we're not going to die. But dude, nobody gets out alive. Like, that's the event. That's the growth for all of us, right?
That's a good one.
Yeah. So make your decision on what your death looks like on this side of eternity.
Yeah.
Decide now what that looks like. So if you think you're too old, Well, again, I was talking to this lady yesterday. I said, I want to make sure that, when I hit 95, maybe I might make it to 100, that I'll die in 72 hours, right? That my body just says, okay, I've had enough, had a good life. My body's going, dude, you're done. You're tired. You pack it up. You did all you could do. High five, I'm on my way out. Rather than slowly die over 20 years.
Mm.
And I think when we had that comment, we're just not willing to pay attention to what's really going on. But for that person, other than trying to poke them in the conscience and make them wake up, in 2 weeks, there could be significant changes on your mobility and how you feel, on your mental health. If you just give it 2 weeks and hold your judgment for 2 weeks, just do it. You'd be astonished at what you can accomplish and how you can feel in just that short period of time.
Amazing. When I was growing up, I always was fascinated by the Japanese samurai culture. And they had this, I don't know if I'm romanticizing it or what, but I get the sense that there was this always awareness of their mortality, their imminent mortality in everything that they did. I'm getting a sense that is kind of like what you're saying about making a decision on how it will be from this side of the fence.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they call it the existential crisis, the crisis of existence, because that's the reality. I mean, there's the end of the road is there. I mean, we can avoid it all we want, or avoid thinking about it, but we can't avoid it.
Mm.
And it's and what a better way to decide on this side that I'm going to make sure that all the steps I'm taking that lead me to the place where I am not a bitter and angry and disappointed old man at the end of my life, which is possible if I'm not paying attention. Mm. And I can be more, if I'm more mindful, I can be a grateful, exhausted human being who just, I had an older client that had died many years ago. I didn't kill her, but she was quite a bit older, and at her wake, there was these cards that her daughter handed out, and it said "Mom's favorite quotes." And one of them, and I can't remember who the quote was from. I think it was from an actress, an old Hollywood actress. Said, "When I finally meet my Maker, maybe I meet Saint Peter at the gates of heaven, and he was going to ask me, what did you do with all the gifts I gave you?" And he said, and I want to be able to say, they're all gone. I used them up on my time on earth. I used everything, every gift you gave me, I used them all up. I did everything I could. And what a great way to go into the end of your days knowing that you did exactly what you set out to do. You changed the course of direction for probably tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people just through some simple behaviors. And then you close your eyes and say, man, it was a life well lived. It was a good life.
I like the sound of that. So is there a difference between mindfulness and meditation? And how can those help you lose weight?
Well, mindfulness is actually just being aware of where you are in the present. Right? So it's like having a split screen inside your brain. And so my mindfulness is that when I look at, if I get, let's say I walk by the kitchen and my brain's going, there's some cake in the fridge. It'd be really good. I know it's only 10:30, but it's good food. And so you have one craving shows up, and mindfulness is the part of your brain, it's the anchor that says, okay, come on now, just keep walking. So I had the ability, it's like my conscience. My mindfulness is my employed conscience that's keeping me on the path that I set out to. Meditation is more of a kind of the ability to bring myself back into a real centered state, and it's the practice of being centered. It's the physical and the mental practice of centering yourself over and over again. Now, but here's a key thing that I think it's important people to look at. when people use meditation they say it's really good for reducing stress. It is. Yoga, I practice yoga, so that's a form of kind of meditative moving exercise. But the caveat is that when you reduce your stress and you're in this calm state, now what you should do is actually decide from this calm state is how you're going to contend with the thing that was stressing you out.
Mm.
Quite often people use meditation and practice like that to reduce their stress, to make them feel better, but they never contend with the problem.
Mm.
So it's like meditative Novocaine, right? It's reducing the pain, but it's not actually fixing the problem. So use your mindfulness or use your meditation to anchor you and settle down the anxiety-based kind of emotions. And then when you're in that calm state from there, I can look at the problem more objectively. And that's a really good time to be discerning and to be contemplative, and then actually start working on how you fix these things that put you there to begin with.
Yeah. I definitely like your take on after you've centered yourself, you need to have almost an action plan on how you're going to deal with whatever it is that's been causing you anxiety or whatever the issues are. Or if you have no anxiety, but you just practice meditation from that centered space, you have a lot more effectiveness when you decide on what actions that you need to take, whatever they be.
Absolutely.
So did you have a clear moment in your life when you think that's the moment I took control of my life? Did you have that? What happened?
It goes back to Portugal, 28 years old. I had a moment of sobriety because prior to being in Portugal, I was living in a ski resort, and cocaine was becoming a friend of mine at that time, and I became that close to making it a permanent problem, and then I got the chance to go to Europe. So I was in a little fishing village for 3 years. I was there. It was just, I think it really saved my life because it took me out of the crazy environment that I was in. But I remember, and it was the most, I'm not sure where it came from. Maybe, it could have been, God knocking on my door saying, son, you got to smarten up because you got some work to do. But I remember how this empty feeling in my stomach, and I don't know where it came from, but it said that, because you did nothing, when you die, nobody will care. Nobody will know because you just partied for the last 15 years. You kind of used people a little bit because your intention was, well, it was about you. You want to party and you weren't a bad guy, but you weren't a good guy either. You were kind of, it's just you weren't doing anybody any favors and, kind of, nice enough, but kind of useless. And I just, and it was just that, I don't know where it came from, but it's that feeling that I'm going to die and nobody's going to care. Because my life, I didn't do anything. I didn't amount to anything. And it's not that I need to win a Nobel Prize or I didn't need to become a Harvard lawyer. It wasn't that complicated. It was the fact that I just didn't do a damn thing. And I was, my life was pretty selfish because it was just about me. And that started my journey. I mean, I had grade 10 education. I had a bit of a criminal record, a long history of drug use, right? So no money, no education, criminal record. Come back to Canada. I was gone. I was so far off the grid that I couldn't even get the government didn't know who I was. They go, where the hell you been? I was so far off the grid in my lifestyle, for those 15 years that, I lived in California, I kind of bounced around the world, and I was nobody. So at the age of 28, moving into my parents' house, having to go on welfare, which was, all very humiliating for me as a young man or, 28-year-old male. And I just I never looked back, and it just it's interesting. But I never would have been able to do what I've done or had the desire to do what I've done in the last 20-some years if I actually hadn't come. I think my grandmother would call it a come into Jesus moment, right?
Right.
A moment where I'm kind of facing my own reality, and And I'm super thankful that whatever inspired that moment, I'm so thankful that it happened.
Yeah, I think we there's what 6-7 billion of us on the planet, and each one of us at some as I think that each person wants their life to mean something.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is. Searching for a meaning in your life. But it's for each person to, like, I can't lift weights for the next guy. I could only lift weights for myself. So it's a journey each person has to make on their own. And that is the truth. That is the truth. I appreciate you sharing your journey with me. I'm sure that it will hit home to a few people, because although we're all different, we share so many similarities. So I'm sure that's going to resonate with some people. So how important is self-identity to this transformation that you've experienced, and how we relate that to people who are out there now, wanting to lose weight? How important is self-identity to them achieving their goals?
Yeah, it's everything. I mean, it's absolutely everything. It's just the uh, to actually to identify what that self is, right? Is so crucial, right? So self-identity. I think we allow self-identity to be kind of become kind of arbitrary, because we can feel different day to day. Why is it today I'm feeling good, but the other day I felt I wanted to walk into traffic blindfolded? Why do I feel high? Why do I feel low? Why do you irritate me? Why do I get mad at him? Why does this bother me? Like, we're all over the map. And so, self-identity to me is actually it's choosing the character strength and the values. There's an old story about Saint George and the Dragon. It's an old story about a knight in shining armor, a dragon, a virgin maiden tied up to a tree. The dragon's going to devour, and there's a cave full of gold, right? So, but it's actually it's an old story. It's a really interesting metaphor. So, what does the dragon do? Well, the dragon, he'll evoke three things out of you. He'll evoke the fight or flight or numb mechanism inside all humans, right? So, the dragon is your fear. So you're either going to fight it, you're going to run away from it. But if a dragon looks at you in the eye, what does he do? He paralyzes you. That's what dragons do in mythology. So, well, that's kind of fascinating. So what is the virgin maiden she represent? She represents your character. So I need to kill my fear to restore my virtue. I need to kill the dragon to regain my character. Face my fear to make sure that I become the person who I was designed to be. And that cave full of gold are the riches that as the knight, as he saves the maiden, he takes the riches and he gives it out to the community. So think about the self-identity that if you're willing to face your fear and to save grasp your identity, to grasp the character, the necessary character strength required to move forward in life, you kill the dragon, you save your virtue, right? You actually claim it, so your self-image improves because I was willing to face what I find uncomfortable. And then who I become becomes this gift to the world around me. I take the gift of me and this new attribute back to the world. It's really such a really incredible story. So the transformation piece is asking the question, who do I need to become to have the life that I want? What is the one character strength, perhaps, maybe one or two character strength that I need to develop and make that my focus, my mantra, so I can kill the dragon, save my virtue, my self-esteem, and take the gift of who I am and what I'm accomplishing out to the world. It's an old story, but it's super powerful.
You've touched me, bro. You've touched me. That is a really powerful story, and I think it's also a beautiful place to end and say thank you so much for giving us your time. Um, kill the dragon, save your virtue, give the gift of yourself to the world. Love
Yeah, yeah, incredible.
it, love it, love it, love it. Dave, thank you so much, bro. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, you're welcome, and I appreciate your willingness to reach out. I mean, it's well, it takes courage, right? Reach out to a stranger and say, hey, do you want to do this? But but I think, my gifts are not my own, right? I'm fortunate. I'm in a place in the world that I work really, really hard, but there's an inspiration that got into me that kept me going, and it's not all easy. But if I never forget the plot, and if I always remember that one day I'm going to be facing eternity at some point, I keep that in my mind, not as a to keep myself in fear of dying, but in awareness to be living. And people are experiencing that right now. I think they're really terrified because they, for the first time in maybe their entire life, they're being forced to face eternity.
Mm-hmm.
They're being forced to face the economic decisions they made over the last 10 years or so. Being forced to face the health realities that they've been, compromised themselves over the last little while. It's a lot of, there's the dragons out there staring everybody in the face across the whole planet. I mean, it's terrifying. And so either this circumstance, it's either going to make you afraid of that economic disaster. It's going to make you afraid of your physical disaster, right? You're either going to numb away and pretend it's not happening, or this is what a hell of a time to show some courage. And on the other side of this, transform yourself. This could be the best thing that ever happened to you. It could be the best thing that ever happened to you, to force the conversation. And I think it's happening on a global level for so many people. And I really hope people pay attention to it, because it could lend into a beautiful, the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years of your life could be extraordinary because of this one giant pause button.
I can say no more.
Okay.
I can't say any more to that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, my friend. Yeah, appreciate it.
So what I will do is I will send you a link where you'll be able to download the raw, the entire thing, and then obviously I chop it up and put it on Facebook and others. And are you on Facebook by any chance?
Yeah, I'll reach out and find you.
Yes, please do. Please do. So that I could, because I've got your site, your website, but I want to be able to tag you in when I put it up.
All right. All right, my friend. Great conversation. Great questions, and it's a real pleasure, man.
Hopefully we could do it again in the next 6-7 months on the other side of COVID-19.
Yeah. We'll pick some. Well, maybe we'll pick some very specific topics, and we'll kind of go deeper into, some. We'll take, whatever people respond to, then we'll go dig deeper into the conversation, and we'll pull it apart.
Lovely. All right then, Dave.
Okay, brother. Thank you.
Take care, brother.
Yeah, you too.